It was a morning in May 2025 when Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Republican congresswoman from Georgia, launched a live attack against Ibrahim Traoré during a broadcast on Twitter Spaces. With more than 45,000 people listening in real time, she didn't hold back. This African boy needs to shut up and stop lecturing America. Who does he think he is? In Ouagadougou, Ibrahim was in the middle of a cabinet meeting when his communications advisor, Yakuba Sawadogo, rushed into the room, phone in hand. Mr. President, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is making extremely offensive remarks about you live on air. Ibrahim halted the discussion, turning to face Yakuba. At just Wu, the Burkinab leader had grown used to public criticism, but the urgency in his advisor's voice made him pay attention. What exactly did she say? He asked, as the ministers leaned forward, the room thick with tension. She called you an African boy who should shut up, and said you have no right to critique America. Sir, a heavy silence settled over the room. Ibrahim knew Greene's reputation, well, a provocateur in U.S. politics, infamous for her conspiracies, and inflammatory rhetoric. But to insult a foreign head of state lived before tens of thousands of listeners. That was new, even for her. How many are listening right now? He asked, staying composed. Over 45,000 and, rising quickly. Ibrahim stood up, walked to the window, and gazed out at the bustling capital below. People working, studying, and building the Burkina Faso of tomorrow. They depended on him to speak on their behalf. Yakuba, he said, can you connect me to that broadcast? The room froze. It was a bold move, joining a live broadcast with one of the most divisive figures in American politics. Mr. President, said Foreign Minister Dr. Alonso Ouedraogo, maybe a more diplomatic route would be wise. Ibrahim raised his hand. Gently, Doctor, with all due respect, she called me a boy and told me to shut up. That's not diplomacy, that's disrespect. Yakuba was already on his phone, fingers moving fast. I've got it, sir. I can request to join the space now. Do it. Back in Washington, Greene continued her tirade, her voice rising with confidence. These African leaders think they can lecture us on democracy. America doesn't need moral lessons from third-world dictators. Comments flooded the screen, some in support, many condemning her. Then a notification appeared. President Ibrahim Traoré has requested to join this conversation. Marjorie laughed smugly. Well, look who wants in the African boy himself. She hit accept without hesitation, certain she could embarrass the young president. And welcome to the show, President, she said mockingly, stretching the title with sarcastic flair. Ready to hear some hard truths about your country? Across the Atlantic, Ibrahim took a deep breath. At 35, he had faced down warlords, managed crises, and rebuilt his country. A loud American congresswoman, just another challenge. Thank you for having me, Congresswoman Greene, he said evenly, his calm voice reaching over 50,000 listeners. I'm here to correct a few misunderstandings. Misunderstandings, Greene scoffed. The only misunderstanding is that you think you're qualified to talk about democracy. Ibrahim didn't flinch. Military discipline and years of leadership had prepared him for moments like this. Before we go further, Congresswoman, may I ask you a simple question? Do you know where Burkina Faso is? There was a pause. Of course I do. It's in Africa. Good. Ibrahim nodded. And do you know what our capital is? Another awkward pause. That's irrelevant. What matters is that you shouldn't be criticizing America. Ibrahim smiled to himself, knowing the audience couldn't see. Our capital is Ouagadougou. Congresswoman, since we're on basic facts, could you tell me Burkina Faso's GDP per capita? I don't need to know technical stuff like that, she snapped. That's curious, Ibrahim said. You're criticizing a country whose fundamentals you admit knowing nothing about. He paused, then delivered the blow. Wasn't it you who claimed that California wildfires were caused by Jewish space lasers? There was stunned silence. Then, laughter and gasps in the comment feed. That's a misquote, Greene stammered. And didn't you also claim COVID-19 vaccines had microchips for tracking, or that 9/11 was an inside job? Greene's composure cracked. You can't. Just this is Congresswoman. Ibrahim cut in firmly, his voice rising with precision and confidence. You called me an African boy and told me to shut up, Ibrahim began, his voice calm but cutting. Now, I'll show you why that was a mistake. By this point, the live Twitter space had crossed 70,000 listeners. On social media, the hashtag #GreenEvStory was exploding. Memes were flying, and the term diplomatic knockout was trending. Let's talk facts. Congresswoman Greene, Ibrahim continued, slipping into the measured, confident tone he used in university lectures. You represent the state of Georgia, correct? A state historically built on the backs of enslaved Africans. That was a long time ago, Greene retorted. Exactly. Ibrahim nodded. Just like many of Africa's present-day struggles are direct results of European and American colonialism. But let's not dwell on the past. Let's talk about what's happening right now. He took a sip of water before resuming. In the last 3 years, under my leadership, Burkina Faso has reduced extreme poverty by 31%. How much has Georgia's poverty rate declined in that same time frame? Greene said nothing. We've built 847 new schools. How many schools have been constructed in Georgia during that period? Still nothing. Our national literacy rate has risen from 67% to 84%. Meanwhile, Georgia still has counties with literacy rates under 80%. Ibrahim wasn't finished. Congresswoman, you personally voted against the infrastructure bill that would have brought $2 billion to your own state. Meanwhile, with far fewer resources, we've managed to pave over 750 miles of rural roads in just 1 year. In the comments section, emojis of fire and applause flooded in. American journalists began joining the space in real time. Sensing a global media moment in the making, what was already being dubbed a diplomatic demolition. You also voted against Medicaid expansion in Georgia, Ibrahim continued, which denied healthcare access to 450,000 of your fellow citizens. Here in Burkina Faso, we've reduced infant mortality by 28% with a fraction of your budget. Greene tried to interrupt, but Ibrahim pressed forward. And since we're speaking about democracy, he added sharply, weren't you involved in efforts to overturn legitimate election results? Didn't you participate in attempts to undermine the will of the American people? It was a direct hit. The same congresswoman who had kicked off the session by trying to belittle an African boy was now being thoroughly dismantled with undeniable facts live in front of more than 80,000 people. Congresswoman Greene, Ibrahim said, his tone still polite but now unmistakably surgical. Perhaps it would help if we discussed something more familiar, simple economic numbers. Burkina Faso has 22 million citizens and a national budget of $4.2 billion. In the past 2 years, with that budget, we've created 340,000 direct jobs. Greene cut in with a desperate jab, but you're still poor. Yes, Ibrahim replied without flinching. We are a developing nation. But here's the critical difference. We're making measurable, rapid progress in our own resources. Georgia, with exponentially more wealth, still has unemployment levels comparable to ours. He paused, letting it sink in. In fact, youth unemployment in Georgia is at 18.3%. In Burkina Faso, it's 17.8%. So by your own logic, this so-called third-world dictator is creating more opportunities for young people than your state government. Greene went quiet. The silence was awkward and loud, and Ibrahim delivered the finishing blow. Since you seem to love conspiracy theories, let me offer one of my own based entirely on evidence. Perhaps the issue isn't that an African boy is giving America advice. Maybe the real problem is that an American congresswoman who doesn't even understand her own state is speaking about nations she's never set foot in. The Twitter space exploded. Hashtags like hashtag Traoré, acute destroys Greene, hashtag Burkina truth, and hashtag diplomatic clapback went viral across platforms. CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera had already started requesting interviews. Congresswoman Ibrahim said as he prepared to close, you told me to shut up, but my education, both military and academic, taught me something else. When we are attacked without reason, we respond, not with anger, but with facts. He paused again, purposefully. And now, I'd like to offer a public invitation. Come visit Burkina Faso. See firsthand what this African boy has accomplished. Perhaps then, you might learn something about real leadership. The listener count soared past 95,000. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who had entered the space intending to humiliate Ibrahim Traoré, was now reduced to stunned silence. Then she abruptly disconnected, but it was too late. The damage was done. Within minutes, clips from the exchange had gone viral. On Twitter, hashtag #DoneGreene and #Traoré, Arlene Arwu, were trending globally. Back in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim ended the call and turned to face his cabinet. There was stunned silence until Dr. Ouedraogo slowly began clapping. One by one, the others rose, applauding loudly. Mr. President, said Yakuba, glancing at his phone, the numbers are phenomenal. The space peaked at 98,000 listeners. Clips are already past 2 million views. Meanwhile, in Washington, chaos had broken out in Marjorie Taylor Greene's office. Her press secretary, Jennifer Walsh, was panicking. Congresswoman, we need an urgent PR strategy. The media calls are not. But Greene was furious, storming back and forth, repeating just one line. How the hell did that kid make me look like a fool? She made me look like a fool. That damn African made me look like an idiot. Marjorie Taylor Greene raged, pacing furiously in her office. How the hell did he know all those numbers about Georgia? He was clearly well prepared. Ma'am, her press secretary Jennifer responded carefully. And technically, everything he said about your past votes and statements was accurate. I don't care, Marjorie snapped. Find a way to hit back. But the damage had already been done. That evening, CNN's Anderson Cooper opened his broadcast with the headline, U.S. Congresswoman Humiliated by African President. In live exchange, over on Fox News, even Tucker Carlson, known for his staunch conservative views, admitted, politics aside, we have to give the man credit. He was sharp, factual, and completely prepared. In the halls of Congress, the backlash began. Several Republican lawmakers started distancing themselves from Greene. She crossed a line this time, a Texas congressman told reporters. Publicly insulting a foreign head of state like that, it's just not acceptable. Sensing the political winds shifting, President Trump posted a carefully worded tweet. I respect leaders who come prepared, regardless of where they're from. America should always pursue respectful diplomacy. Meanwhile, in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim's phone was ringing non-stop. African heads of state reached out one after another. The president of Senegal said, you defended the dignity of an entire continent today. The Nigerian president added, that was historic. Brother, you've made Africa proud. In just 24 hours, the global response was staggering. When Ibrahim Traoré walked into his office the next morning, he was met by his foreign affairs advisor, Amina Tokoni, who carried a thick stack of documents. Mr. President, she said with a wide smile, we've received interview requests from CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, France 24, Deutsche Welle, 47 other global outlets. Ibrahim calmly sipped his morning coffee, flipping through front pages of international newspapers, The Guardian, Young African Leader, Schools U.S. Congresswoman, in live debate, Le Monde, When Africa Answers with Facts and Grace, Der Spiegel, the moment that redefined African leadership at American universities. The debate sparked academic buzz. At Harvard Law School, Professor Michael Thompson told his international relations class, this is a textbook case of how preparation and dignity overpower rhetoric and aggression. Back in Georgia, Greene's own constituents had mixed reactions. Her diehard supporters tried to spin the incident, but many Georgians were openly embarrassed. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution ran a brutal editorial. Our representative just embarrassed us on the global stage. Business leaders in Atlanta expressed concern. This hurts Georgia's reputation, said the CEO of a major tech firm. No company wants to be associated with this kind of international fiasco. Across Africa, the moment sparked a wave of pride. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa declared, President Traoré showed the world that Africa has articulate and capable leadership. Kenyan President William Ruto added, he represented our shared dignity with class. In China, state media framed the episode as proof of declining U.S. soft power. When a so-called superpower is out-argued by a developing nation, the global balance is shifting. One editorial read, even Vladimir Putin chimed in, saying, new leaders are rising on the world stage, and they're not coming from the West. Global investors took notice. 3 European investment groups announced plans to fund infrastructure projects in Burkina Faso. Traoré's display of leadership and competence has convinced us this is a stable, forward-moving nation, said a London-based analyst. Meanwhile, the pressure on Greene grew unbearable. A week after the broadcast, Democratic lawmakers in Congress had drafted a formal censure motion. Shockingly, some Republicans were signing on. Attacking the head of an allied government during a public broadcast is indefensible, said the Democratic House leader. House Speaker Mike Johnson, a fellow Republican, found himself in an awkward bind. I will speak with Congresswoman Greene about the importance of diplomatic conduct, he said in a news briefing, visibly uncomfortable. Ibrahim, for his part, was wisely capitalizing on the moment. He announced an academic speaking tour across the U.S., including stops at Georgetown, Columbia, and Yale. We don't want walls, he said in a CNN interview. We want bridges. The exchange with Congresswoman Greene was unfortunate, but it showed how vital mutual respect is in global affairs. His first lecture, held at Georgetown University, sold out in minutes. Over 3,000 people packed into the hall to hear from the young African leader who had dismantled a U.S. Congresswoman with pure data and diplomacy. Africa doesn't need saviors, he told the hushed crowd. We need equal partners. That's how we grow together. The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. Back home in Burkina Faso, the ripple effect was immediate and powerful. 3 American corporations announced $800 million in new investments in the country. President Traoré's competence and clarity gave us confidence, said the CEO of a major multinational. Even tourism saw a surge. Within days, Burkina Faso experienced a 340% spike in Google searches. Tourists began flocking to the country. The whole world wants to visit the nation led by the president who humiliated an American congresswoman, joked the Minister of Tourism. But Ibrahim stayed grounded. We can't let a viral moment distract us from our real mission, he told his ministers. We have a nation to build. Still, the international press didn't miss a step. When he inaugurated a rural school, the BBC was there. when he visited a newly constructed hospital. Al Jazeera captured it all. The African boy Marjorie Taylor Greene had tried to silence had now become one of the most respected political voices on the continent. 2 weeks after the viral confrontation, Ibrahim Traoré decided it was time to address the world formally, not with a rebuttal but with a message. He would give a televised national address, broadcast globally from the presidential palace in Ouagadougou. Aminata, he said to his aide, I want this speech to be different. This is not about Congresswoman Greene. This is about who we are as a people. The speech was scheduled for prime time and aired across more than 80 international news networks. When Ibrahim appeared on screen, dressed in traditional yet regal Burkina attire, his presence was magnetic. Citizens of Burkina Faso, friends of Africa, and people of the world, he began. Recently, our nation has come under the global spotlight in an unexpected way. He smiled lightly. An American congresswoman tried to silence us, but instead, she amplified our voice. Today, the whole world is listening. In the palace hall, diplomats from 45 countries watched in silence. We do not respond with rage or insults. Ibrahim continued. We respond with data, with dignity, with truth. That is who we are. He gestured toward slides displaying key statistics. Since that episode, we've received 12 international investment offers, 34 invitations from universities for academic collaboration, and 18 nations have requested bilateral cooperation. But he knew numbers alone weren't the victory. Our greatest achievement isn't in deals or invitations. It's in proving that modern Africa is prepared, articulate, and ready to lead. He paused for effect. Yes, we are young. Yes, we are from a continent still developing. But that does not make us less. It makes us more determined. The global audience surpassed 15 million live viewers. Congresswoman Greene called me an African boy. I accept that title with pride. I am young, I am African, and I am building a future worthy of both. After 30 compelling minutes, he closed with a direct message. To America, we are your allies, not your subordinates. To Europe, we are partners, not charity cases. To the world, Africa is ready for its seat at the table. 6 months later, everything had changed. Ibrahim Traoré stood in New York City not as the president of a small, overlooked nation, but as one of the most respected diplomats on earth. He had been invited to address the prospective United Nations General Assembly on youth leadership in the modern era back in Burkina Faso. The transformation was visible. The country attracted $3.2 billion in direct investment. 5 new universities were under construction, all through international partnerships. GDP had risen 18% in just the first half of the era historic high. Who would have imagined, remarked Dr. Ouedraogo, during a cabinet meeting, that a single clash with an American congresswoman could change our national destiny. But Ibrahim kept his focus steady. The clash was only the spark. He replied, the real mission has always been about developing our people. Meanwhile, Marjorie Taylor Greene faced political collapse. She had been removed from 2 key congressional committees. In Georgia, a rising Republican challenger had emerged in her primary. The Traoré incident has utterly destroyed her credibility, said a political analyst in Atlanta. Polls revealed that 67% of Georgians disapproved of her behavior during the confrontation. Across Africa, Ibrahim had become a diplomatic icon. Other young leaders began modeling his bold yet respectful approach to international relations. He showed us we can be firm without being rude, said the president of Ghana. We don't need to bow to anyone. Academia followed suit. 3 major American universities created courses centered around the Traoré doctrine. Harvard Business School even built a case study titled, Turning Confrontation into Global Opportunity. One quiet evening in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim walked the palace gardens with Ajara. You changed the way the world sees Africa, she said softly. He looked toward the stars and smiled. No, he replied. I only showed the world who we've always been. The difference is they're finally paying attention. What began as an attempt by Marjorie Taylor Greene to humiliate an African boy ended with that same young man reshaping global perceptions. Ibrahim Traoré had proven that in the information age, preparation, dignity, and purpose will always overpower arrogance and ignorance, no matter how loud.